26th. I hope your week has been fantastic all round, and I hope you're doing well today. You're welcome to Safe Space. This is where we have conversations that inspire and open our eyes to realities that we sometimes might overlook in our society. We talk about family life, violence, abuse, and how this can be completely eradicated, or at least to the minimal level in our society. Last week, I had a conversation about generational causes and family patterns. Today, we're going to be having a very insightful conversation on something very important as well. I'm here with Barrister Olumide Kayode Omoshebi. My name is Folua Kiremi. Good evening, Barrister. How are you today?
Good evening, Faye. Great to see you again today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, and good evening to our listeners all over. It's great to be here again. Thanks for tuning in, and we do not take you for granted. Excuse me. So today, I want to take a little detour as I've been having a lot of calls and people try to explain their marital situations, their relational situations, and it is obvious that people don't really know what abuse means.
Yes.
When we are talking of domestic violence and abuse, they will say, but he has not started beating me yet. That he only held me. Another one was saying he just pushed me, that beating has not started. And it seems as if people think when we are talking of domestic violence and abuse, it simply means fighting, beating, slapping, and all that. So I want to take you on a little journey to define, to help explain what domestic violence means and the types of abuse that we have.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay, Finn?
Yes.
Okay, so now the term domestic violence, let me stop there. Okay. Domestic violence, that term refers to violence in the home. That is why domestic is there. Abroad, it is referred to as intimate partner violence. That is violence between people who are intimate, which means who are in a relationship. So it doesn't mean you must be married for there to be domestic violence. It means all you have to do is to be in a relationship, an intimate relationship. Domestic violence also happens between siblings. That is, people who live together as brothers and sisters, probably in a family house, and they start fighting, and it leads to beating and all that. It is also violence happening in the home. So it talks about a behavior or a pattern. That means something that happens that reoccurs. It is intended or used to maintain control over a family or a lover, intimate partner, and so on. The issue with domestic violence is that it is used by one party to take control, to maintain control, over another. I have a little bit of a cough, so please, you would endure with me. It is used mainly to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner. So the behavior is to frighten, to intimidate, to manipulate, to humiliate someone. Now, the domestic violence is the physical part of it, which is the beating, the slapping, the kicking, and all that requires touch. Now, there are 6 kinds of abuse, which I would explain to you. The first is the emotional abuse. It is referred to as emotional abuse. Now, emotional abuse is basically undermining a person's sense of self-worth, pulling down their self-confidence through constant abuse, criticism, belittling them, name calling, or verbal abuse.
Yes.
Emotional abuse is mainly abuse with the mouth. For example, if Fin is my wife, I keep telling Fin, you know, what kind of stupid words do you say? You don't even have sense. What your food that is not sweet? I don't know if in your family nobody taught you how to cook. I don't blame you. Maybe that's why your father drove away your mother. You know, they just keep abusing until the person is unable to talk. You keep telling the person how the person is not good enough, not smart enough, does not know how to do anything, calls you names, insults you, and continuously criticizes you. They act in a jealous and possessive manner. They always isolate you from family and friends. And, you know, they also humiliate you publicly in any way. This is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is they are simply words said to you. Words. Now, the psychological abuse, the second is psychological abuse, which is causing fear by intimidation.
Yes.
When you say psychological abuse, the first thing that comes to your mind, psychological. The first is psycho. Psycho means a person who is unstable.
Yes.
So when you say psychological abuse, you are referring to a person who causes fear by intimidation, threatening physical harm to you, the partner, your boyfriend, girlfriend, or to children. At times, psychological abusers destroy property. You know, they say, if I catch you, they carry the chair, they throw at you, smash the stool, do as if they are looking for something to beat you with. It is called psychological abuse. It is mainly to create fear by intimidation. In psychological abuse, it doesn't have to beat you, but creates fear. You don't know. And if I come home and I meet you in that house, if I meet you in that house today, I will send you to your maker. If you use your two legs to walk out of the, I will, you know, they threaten you that you are so afraid you would have run to your neighbor's house. Please come and help me beg him. I don't know. It is always causing fear by intimidation. That is called psychological abuse. Now, the third kind of abuse is called financial or economic abuse. Now, this is what people don't talk about a lot. Financial or economic abuse. This involves attempting to take a person's financial independence away or trying to maintain total control over the finances or the business of the other spouse, forbidding or preventing others to work. Now, financial abuse happens a lot with people who tell their wives to stop work. Those ones that say, I want you to stop work. You met them working. You say, no, you want them to stop working. You want them to go home, take care of the children. I will provide for the house. It is called financial abuse, which is taking over a person's source of income or their livelihood. Now, financial abuse is a crime in Nigeria. To stop someone from working is a crime according to Section 12, subsection 1 of the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act. It carries a 2-year imprisonment term. You cannot stop someone from working. It is one of the most dangerous forms of abuse Because a person goes to primary school, goes to secondary school, goes to the university, becomes a medical doctor, goes to the university, becomes a lawyer, becomes an engineer, and then gets married to someone, and the person says, you know what, I want you to resign from that your job and stay home. This is what happens. If you resign from your job, you stay home, your husband says, I will be paying you salary. Then after 10 years of you staying at home, suddenly your husband loses his job.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly your husband falls sick or has a stroke or even dies. And you have nothing like a business or a means of income. How would you not take care of the children? How will you now take care of the children? By even stopping someone from working, you make the government unable to realize tax from the person, which makes the person a liability to the government.
Yes.
So if you want someone unable to work, then don't go for someone who is working. You can go to the village and pick someone who is not really educated or who has nothing that they are doing but farming. So you buy a plot of land and you tell the person to stay home. So at home the person can be farming and gardening and doing all that, but not someone who is a professional, who has a job. And this has been used by men to exploit women for such a long time, because a lot of men are insecure about the progress, the prosperity of their spouse.
Yes.
Some people have a problem where their wives are doing better than them financially. They cannot stand the progress, the success of their wives. So they come and they say, I want you to. The most ridiculous are those that even use religion. They say the man is the head of the house, so I want you to stay, I'm the head, I will provide, so to resign from your job. There was a case that I handled about 2-3 years ago, where the woman was the deputy director and was to become director in civil service in Lagos State, in her department. She was going to be 50, and suddenly her husband just started that his plan for her is that by 50 she would have started her own business. And she said, what business? Because she has never done business. She has been in the civil service all her life. And the man just started. She was next in line to be director. It became an issue because the man is a pastor. And the problem started. The woman said that whenever he was talking, he'll be saying, my house. That you can come in my house. You can't be doing this in my house. And after some time, she said it looked as if she has no inheritance in this one, because he never says our house. Wow. He says, my house. So you cannot do this in my house. So she applied for a loan. She started working and bought land and built a four flats. She did not tell him. The day that she had almost completed, she informed him, and that was where the problem started. To even come and see the house and pray over the house, he did not get out of the car. He just drove and said, oh, that's the house. And she came down, and he did not come down. It became a problem to celebrate the achievement of his wife. Afterwards, he now started that he wants her to stop work. And it became an issue. And family and friends said, Chebi, you have gotten to the pinnacle. You are deputy director. There's this, there's that. Will you allow your marriage to go because of your job? Is your job more important than your marriage? They put so much pressure on her. And he said he was going to open a business for her. He was going to do this, do that. Eventually, because of pressure, she resigned. Her boss said, is she crazy? Because you are next in line to start running this place. And then she resigned, and 2 months, 3 months, Oga, where's the business that you said you want to open for me? 4 months, 5 months. He said, and when he's ready, he will do it. So I should just resign. I have resigned. I should sit at home.
Doing nothing.
Doing nothing. That was just his plan. So she now saw some applications online and had applied to the UK because as a deputy director, she was able to get something there. And she had finished all the processes and everything. And she just told them that, well, she's gotten a job in the UK and she's leaving. A demand exploded. That he said, I've been in the house for 8 months, sitting, waking while my mates are going to work. You deceived me. I knew that this was manipulation. I left my job where I was next to be Oga now, and you did nothing. So it became another problem that she must not travel. If she travels, that was the end of the marriage. Eventually, they came to me. That was when she came to me, and I told her, Madam, you had better travel. This man cannot stand your success. At the end of the day, she left. Now, our children, one after the other, have gone there to meet her, and you understand.
Yeah.
What am I telling you, ladies and gentlemen? Financial abuse is to disenfranchise women from being able to succeed. There are some businesses also, like the ones that we got, a lady, that we wanted to do some transaction to encourage her business. When we wanted to pay the money, she gave us an account and it was another name. And I said, this is not your account. She said, yes, it's my husband's account. And I said, why do we want to pay you? And she said she doesn't have a bank account. That is her husband's, that all her business is to her. Then her husband would now sign out money for her, the one he thinks she should use, the one. I said, Madam, we're not going to pay anything unless you open an account. She said, that's how they do it, too. That her husband's account is, and she is a businesswoman. So my point, ladies and gentlemen, especially women, never leave your jobs for anybody.
Yes.
The only exception to this is if that job is so stressful and demanding that your spouse does not see you. And they say, you know what, you have to, but it will be to get another job that is less demanding. I greet those who are married to doctors who have to go on shift on call. But aside that, you cannot tell a person to leave their job for the institution of marriage. Because if anything happens to the spouse, sometimes the person dies, and before you say Jack, the family have come and driven out the wife and the children and taken over the property.
Yes.
But you have no job, you have no money to fight back or to even take care of yourself. You now start going around, greeting one uncle, calling one auntie, and that is where it starts. When someone gives you 10,000, you after some weeks you go back, uncle, the children have not gone to school, and then he says, okay, no problem, come and meet me in room 202 at Las Vegas Hotel. Sorry, I hope there's no hotel like that. And then you get there and the man says, oh yeah, now the back on the ground. And you say, is it because I asked you for money that you want to? The man says, I can't keep giving you money for nothing. And then you get angry and you leave the hotel room. The man doesn't say anything. 3 days after, when you've seen your children have not eaten, when you see that there is no change, where there is no other option, the woman will be the one to call back that man and say, uncle, I'm sorry. You see, that day I was really angry and everything. Please don't be. Can I still come to meet you there? And the man will say, no problem, come. And you will say, well, I'll just close my eyes, and after he's done, I will get up and collect the money. That is what happens to women that have no source of income, who have been disenfranchised by one man telling them to stop work, and then the man has the audacity to now die before time. He now dies or has a stroke, can no longer provide, and you have stopped this one from working.
Mm.
So that is for financial or economic abuse. It is what? Against the law. All these abuses are against the law. Anyway, the fourth abuse is the physical abuse, which we all know as the physically hurting a partner by hitting, grabbing, pulling, kicking, burning, pinching, slapping, biting, denying the person medical care after beating, all that. That is physical abuse. Using your hands or legs or an object to hit the other. And you would know that you are in a physically abusive relationship if your partner damages property when he's angry, break the television, push the window, break the window, kicks the door, and all sorts. The person pushes, slaps, bites, or kicks you or chokes you. Times physically abusive marriages, the person forces you to leave the home, pushes you out of the house at night, locks you out, or those that you want to leave, they pull you and lock you inside. That is physical abuse.
Yes.
Now, the fifth one is the sexual abuse. That is forcing a partner to take part in a sexual act without the partner's consent. You will be in an abusive relationship. That is a sexually abusive relationship. It's all about forcing you into sexual conditions and sexual acts or positions that you are not consenting to. Hold you down during sex, grab your throat, squeeze you, force you into, even within married partners. The only thing is that you cannot say that your spouse raped you, because according to the marriage creed, his body is your body and your body is his body, to do with as they will. But if there is sexual abuse, that is a sexual act without your consent. That is number 5. And then finally, number 6 is the cultural or identity abuse. Now, the cultural or identity abuse usually happens when people from different cultures or tribes get married. When the abuser starts using an aspect of the other's culture to inflict insults, suffering, and afflict their self-esteem. You use a part of their culture to start abusing them. That is why when people are marrying from different tribes, you should be careful when your partner uses an aspect of your culture to devalue or to rate down your self worth. I would use a very, very, very simple example. There was a time I had a dog in my house, and one day our dog was missing. We looked round, we did not find it. So I have a neighbor who lives directly opposite my house, from Akwa Ibom. I just went straight to his house and I knocked. I said, Oga, his name is Adonis. I said, Adonis, where my dog? So he now said, that the dog didn't enter his compound, or that, in the morning. I just said, where my dog? He was still trying to think that, maybe I'm asking if he has seen the dog. I said, where my dog? He said, what do I mean that where is my dog? That, what do I mean? I said, no, they chop dog. Eh? No mean I dey chop dog for your town. I beg. If I no see this dog, I go right to police. Go carry all of us for here. And he was like, what do you mean? How can did I eat your dog? Then he now said, for this thing that I said, if he sees that my dog, they will kill it and eat it, use it for 404. So that is an example of cultural abuse. I use that their culture to start abusing him. We are looking for dogs. I went to meet somebody for a dog. I went to meet somebody from Akwa Ibom. It's another one that this one happened in Lagos here, where what even happened? They were married a wife from that Benin Delta side. And after a while, the man started accusing her of, every woman's accusation is that they are cheating.
Mm.
The man said, cheating how? And the man said, no, be all of them, they do prostitution for on our side, that they even export you people abroad to go and do prostitution, So because there's a high rate of that kind of thing there, does that mean that all of us are probably, you use something that happens in their area to start abusing them? That is cultural abuse. By embarrassing you in front of your friends and family, it's cultural abuse, using a part and an aspect of your culture to abuse you. Now, in all of these 6 kinds of abuse that I have told you, there are basically 6 kinds of abuse. There are laws that protect each and every one from all the different kinds of abuse.
Yes.
Now, Section 360 of the Nigerian Criminal Code Act, any person who unlawfully and indecently assaults a woman or girl is guilty of a misdemeanor and is liable to imprisonment for 2 years.
Yes.
That is, if you unlawfully assault a woman or a girl, 2 years. Now, Section 353 of the Nigerian Criminal Code Act says anyone who unlawfully and indecently assaults any male person, that is a man, is guilty of a felony and liable to imprisonment for 3 years. So if you beat a woman, if you beat a man, it is there. And let me see. There is another for sexual abuse, which is another extreme form of sexual abuse, is rape. Section 358 of the Nigerian Criminal Code Act says anyone who commits an offense of rape is liable to imprisonment for life with or without caning. That means you could be flogged on top of your life sentence.
Mm.
Now, Section 359 of the Nigerian Criminal Code Act says any person who attempts to commit the offense of rape, rape is life imprisonment, attempted rape, is guilty of a felony and liable to imprisonment for 14 years with or without caning. Now, Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act talks about psychological abuse in Section 5, subsection 1, that a person who willfully or knowingly places another person in fear of physical injury commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years or a fine not exceeding 200,000 naira. So for those who will go around when they are angry, start breaking television, breaking video, breaking the windscreen of cars, Section 11, subsection 1 of the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act of 2015 says a person who causes mischief or destruction or damage to property of another person with the intent to cause, on knowing that it is likely to cause distress or annoyance to the victim, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years or a fine not exceeding 300,000. Now, section 4, subsection 1 says a person who causes emotional, verbal, and psychological abuse on another commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 1 year.
Mm.
Do you understand? Now, section 12, subsection 1 that I mentioned about those who tell their wives to stop work.
Mm-hmm.
Section 12, subsection 1 says a person who causes forced financial dependence or economic abuse of another commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years or to a fine not exceeding 500,000 or both.
Mm.
So, all these things the law has already provided to safely safeguard us from abuse. But the major thing, ladies and gentlemen, is if you find yourself in an abusive marriage, leave, pack your bags, and leave. Finny, this morning, a gentleman reached out to me through Facebook and typed the story of how just 2 weeks ago, the husband of his sister beat her to death. She was pregnant, eight
Mm.
months pregnant. And he started by punching her in the tummy and kicking her in the tummy. Eventually, they rushed her to the hospital and the doctor was able to bring out the child, but the woman died. She was almost dead by the time because she started passing out blood, vomiting, her face was covered in blood. But the issue is that the man had been beating her for a long time. I said, what were you people looking at? Said then that their pastor came and said he has entered the matter now, that this thing will stop. Don't worry. I said, the pastor, now your sister is gone. The pastor's wives and children, or the pastor's wife and children, they are complete. You have lost a member of the family because a pastor told you this and some people came to settle fight. Ladies and gentlemen, this year we've lost over 130 women already to domestic violence and abuse. And so we need to tell women and men, because at least we have 15 men who have died from assault from their wives.
Yes.
Some died together with their wives, like the gentleman in River Valley Estate in Bega,
Mm.
who killed his wife and also drank
Yeah.
poison.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are in an abusive marriage, it is not a spiritual matter. It is not an Olori Ebi matter. It is a matter of your own life. You do not need to take permission from anybody to inform anybody to save your life. So as you do not need the permission of anyone to eat, you don't need permission to stand up to walk. So it is nobody, since you are the one that chose the person to marry and you realize later that you made a mistake, correct your mistake by leaving your mistake.
Yes.
Fini,
Ah,
over to you.
thank you, Barrister. Thank you so much for the enlightenment this evening on the several laws involved, as really in relation to the various types of abuse that we have in Nigeria. It's currently 20 minutes to 7 o'clock. You're listening to Safe Space on Your Women Radio 91.7, Nigeria's only radio station for women and their families. And Barrister Kayode Olumide Omoshebi has been teaching us or giving us insights into the various forms of abuse. I mentioned financial abuse, psychological abuse, cultural abuse, verbal abuse. We've discussed several types of abuse and the laws that are binding to these things. There are several of punishments to those who commit these offenses that infringe this that commits these abuses, basically on their spouses in their marriages, both male and female. So if by chance you're going through something like this, or people are going through this, violence is not something you say it would change for. It's something to take action for. Just in case you have your questions, you have some things that you'd like to ask Barrister this evening, you want to share your 2 cents on the conversation, you have something to say, You want to share one or two things with us. You have questions. You want to tell us some things concerning what we're talking about today. You can call us on 07000 917 917 07000 917 917. You can also call 09155 917 917 09155 917 917. Let us hear from you. Let's hear your thoughts. Barisa has shared so many forms of violence currently happening in our nation, and he has also shared the different law enforcement, that attracts, that this different forms of violence attract. So yes, you can ask your questions if you have any questions at all, something you're not clear about. If there's something you're not sure of, you're not clear about while Barista was talking, you can do well to ask now. The number is still 07000 917 917 07000 917 917. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to know your thoughts and your contribution to the matter this evening. 07000 917 917. Marisa, to the pastor you mentioned earlier, because I remember there was a time you mentioned that there is such a thing as a punishment for an accomplice to an abuse. So if you by chance encouraged somebody to stay in an abusive marriage, or you know that somebody is liable to die in a particular marriage and you advise them to stay, I think you mentioned some time ago that there's a punishment for that as well.
Yes. If you are aware of a crime being committed and you cover up the crime, you are an accomplice to the crime after the fact. Go ahead. You said you have somebody.
Hello, good evening. Hello? All right, we lost the call. The number is still 07000 917 917 07000 917 917. Let's hear from you. Let's hear your thoughts, your contributions, your advice, and most importantly, your questions this evening on the topic that we're discussing about. So, we're talking about the different forms of abuse that people go through in our world today, even financial abuse, economic abuse, when you don't allow your spouse to work, is a form of abuse. When your wife has PhD, BSc, or your husband, I don't think women tell their husbands not to work, but anyways, financial abuse is also a huge form of abuse that people go through on a daily basis, and it's not something, and it's as a punishment. There's a punishment attached to it. There's a law binding that you do not restrict your spouse from working. Hello, good evening. Please reduce the volume of your radio. All right, we lost that call. So there is a law that says you cannot prevent your spouse from working, or there's a punishment attached to that. We also have psychological abuse, physical abuse. That's the most common one that so many people are aware of. Emotional abuse, psychological abuse, cultural abuse as well. All of this abuse have laws that are binding. So if by chance you're going through any of these things, you can easily report, and the person will get punished for what the person has done to you, depending on the kind of abuse that it was. You can ask your questions this evening. If there's something you're not clear on, something you're not sure about, you're not clear on that particular thing that Barista mentioned, you're not clear on that thing that he mentioned as well, you can call us this evening to ask your questions and share your thought. What do you think about the conversation this evening? The number, once again, is 07000 917 917. You can also call 09155 917 917 09155 917 917 to ask your questions and share your thoughts this evening. On the what you were mentioning before, Barista, before the call came in, about an accomplice to a crime. What's the punishment for that in Nigeria? when you encourage someone to stay in an abusive marriage and eventually leads to that of the person?
You become an accessory to the crime, because if you are aware of a crime and you refuse to report or connive to cover it down, you become an accessory after the fact. It now depends on the gravity of the crime. If it is murder, it makes you an accomplice to murder. If it is domestic violence, it makes you so depending on the gravity, that is how it is.